Okay, here's my BallBot BallLauncher. I was going to use a breadboard. At first, I did use it for some of these things. Um, I kept having to change stuff, so I ended up just wiring it. This is version 2, but I've changed many things since then. So let's go over the circuitry and then we'll talk about the code. So first up, this servo here. This launches the controls the trajectory. My original design used a DC motor, but the servo was a little more useful, and I preferred the way it operated, so I changed it. DC motor here, this is it rotates the launcher just like the CAD design explained. These two motors here, they are the launchers. They launch the ball when the force sensor here detects it, or when you press the appropriate button. I also use this driver here to control the motors, and the battery obviously is powering that. It has an IR receiver, obviously for the remote. So firstly, we'll talk about the remote functions. So first up, if you press 0 here, it will fire up the rotating motor, and it will continue until you press 0 again. 1 will move the servo, so that'd be all the way to one direction. 2 would be 90, and then this would be the opposite. So that's how you do that. So you can shoot the ball in either direction. And then 4 will fire the launch motors. It fires it for a time, and then they stop. And then the force sensor, I basically kind of set it to about as low as I can get it. So when it detects the tennis ball, they'll fire. And then when it stops detecting the force, they will cease firing. So now we get into the code. I put some explanations kind of just to explain. I don't want to run out of time, so we'll kind of go through this pretty quickly. So this is obviously the libraries that loads everything into it. This is the constants for all your sensors and such. Creates the objects. Monitors running state of motors. Initializes, so it initializes everything. Main loop for the IR sensor, force sensors. Initializes display. Configures pin modes for motor control. Check and decodes incoming signals. It's a kind of breakdown of how that operates here. Monitors force sensor, controls motor based on force threshold. So it's kind of like how I was talking about the threshold changes. Maps IR code buttons. So all this basically is how the buttons work. So all the IR stuff. Starts motor A with full speed. So the launching motor is only shooting at full speed. I felt like that was fine, honestly. Of course, if this was actually a simulation, I could check. If it wasn't a simulation as a real bot, I could actually detect that and see how far the ball goes. But just for the situation, I just left it alone. And these, of course, stops the motors. So now that I've explained the code, I'll kind of just talk again about the whole thing. So again, force sensor, if it detects any force, it will fire the launching motors. Basically, there's a time limit on how long it runs. It runs for, let's see. Okay, here's your delay. So, same thing. Basically just have a timer, 3-second timer, 3,000 milliseconds. That's kind of how I control it. It took a lot of time to kind of figure this all out. I would get one thing working and then something else would break, which is why the wiring looks so sloppy. But I ultimately got it working, so I was kind of just like, all right, well, we are in a functioning mode. This would be time for a prototype if this was a real bot. And of course, we would further develop things from there. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the results, and I met all of my criteria. And yeah, so that concludes the explanation of this bot.